Hello, good evening, and thanks again for another edition of Ideas Exchange. Tonight, I want the two of us, me and you watching me at home, to reflect on a number of things that should bother you. First of all, I have been thinking about what happened last week. The Church of Pentecost put together all those who matter in this country to think about Ghana. They were thinking about a national development agenda. And you will notice from the videos that will be shared on the screen that almost every very important person in this country was there. So you see the chairman of the Pentecost Church with Ghana flag covering him. And later I'll play a video in which he will talk about why the Ghana flag may not be as relevant to you as a citizen, because the sense of patriotism is winning away because of bad leadership over the past few years. Now, the reason why I have been reflecting on what the Church of Pentecost did is that, why is it that after so many years, they are now thinking of bringing together everybody who matters? President Kufuor, you see in that shot, I've seen Dr. Baumia, I've seen former President John Dramani Mahama, the Speaker of Parliament was there. In fact, the Chief Justice was there. Very important. In fact, Ghana descended at the Pentecost Convention Center at Gomwa Fete here in the central region. But while this was going on, I just asked myself, leadership, it could be the church, the Trade Union Congress, the Ghana Bar Association, the Judicial Service of Ghana, etc. All of them have been quiet and looking on when we appear to be running down state institutions. And so just a few days ago, when there was a coup in Niger, and ECOWAS leaders met and flexed their muscles, and the Nigerians replied and got the support from Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, and so on, Guinea, and so on. I just brought to you the map of West Africa. Look at Niger, look at Mali, look at Burkina Faso, and look at Guinea. These are French-speaking countries. Guinea shares border with the sea, and all these landlocked countries are just hanging above Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire. And they are thinking of going to war. And I'm asking myself, if ECOWAS leaders will sit down and look on when their colleagues abuse the people, act with impunity, dictatorship, destroy institutions, politicize just everything, and then they say non-interference in the governance in other countries, and then they will reduce Niger to what we have now, does it make sense to see these old men, young men, women who gather as leaders of West Africa? And to what extent? Of course, that war won't happen because the security couples will tell them that Nigeria, there are issues about Boko Haram and terrorists that Nigeria is fighting. The same way is threatening Togo. Recently, you heard they were fighting terrorists, and that's happening in Burkina Faso. And Ghana has massed up military men around the border to be sure that there will be no infiltration. So why will any ECOWAS country go to that extent? Now, in all this, as we speak, I have been also talking about what appears to be Ghana's problem. And I have been reading a lot, doing a lot of research. And this is what I read from somebody who is a pastor, and he's a master of philosophy. And this is what I culled from an article he posted about 5 years ago. It says, Ghana is her own problem and her own solution, and the reformation of unethical attitudes of indigenous Ghanaians is key to her economic, structural transformation and sustainability. That's Francis Mensah. And while I'm thinking about this, I quickly look at our few challenges. Just recently, we've been talking about Cecilia Dapa and missing money, and we know that is ongoing. Then we also hear about $110,000 missing from somebody's house who is also close to government. Then we are hearing the Auditor General's report, which is talking about a whopping 60 billion cedis in losses by the Central Bank of Ghana. So what really do they do? They have given some explanation that I'll share with you on the program. But look at what the Auditor General's annual report is saying about Bank of Ghana. Foreign and domestic travel, 97 million cedis. I'm talking about 2022. Motor vehicle maintenance stroke running, 131 million cedis. Communication expenses, 32 million cedis. Computer-related expenses, 67 million cedis. Now, if you compute this, 97 plus 32 plus 97 should give you a range around 200,000. Plus 131 million should give you about 331 million cedis. And I see this as complete waste. Because in 2022, the central bank knew the position of our economy. And the central bank, which is supposed to be working as an independent institution, but in one way or the other is working in tandem with the finance ministry, should be thinking twice about what we call austerity measures. But this is the wastage. We'll talk about that later. In the studio with me tonight, we'll be looking at a number of things that should bother you, that should annoy you, and why we have brought ourselves this far. Before I introduce my guest, I want to share some few tweets with you. These tweets by Dr. John Kwabena Kwache were as far back as February 2023. February 2023. And this is what he tweeted. This is sad. Bank of Ghana unlawfully prints $3.3 billion for government and receives a paper in return. This will severely impair the bank's balance sheet. We are talking about July 2023, and we know the bank's balance sheet. And that's John Kwache. But that tweet is not over. There are several others, and if my producers will help me, we can move on to another of such tweets. If you just go a little forward, you see another result of financial recklessness perpetrated by the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance. How could Bank of Ghana have lent 41.9 billion cedis to government in 2022 when its act allowed only 3.5 billion cedis? That's 5% of 2021. Now, I'll stop here. Now, the John Kwache I spoke about, whose picture they are sharing on the screen, is not an ordinary person. This is somebody who has worked at the Bank of Ghana for several years. He is currently the Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs. He's also been a Director of Research at the Institute of Fiscal Studies. He's been an advisor to the Executive Director of the International Monetary Fund. Now, if these people were speaking as far back as February and they knew what was happening in 2022, why will we be sitting here today and be talking about as much as 60 billion cedis in losses? And the explanation is DDEP. Please, you can take Dr. Kwache away. I don't know. They are saying it is because of exchange rate. They are saying it is because cocoa bonds or other things that I will share with you on our program tonight. My guests are two individuals. They are into finance. One of them was with us last week, and you know the conversation didn't land well, and so we agreed that we'll continue today. He's Dr. Nene Adams Asafote. He's a financial economist and an adjunct senior lecturer at the School of Graduate Studies, University of Professional Studies here in Accra. That's Dr. Nene Adams. Doc, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
You are looking young. You are looking like some Dadabi.
Oh, senior, at this moment in time.
You are calling me senior. But that's just a way to welcome you.
Wonderful.
The other gentleman is Victor Edu. Victor Edu is a chartered accountant. I made a mistake. I was calling you Prof. Yes. Victor, you are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You look very smallish, sandwiched by two giants. My stomach is my trademark, and his height is his trademark.
I'm blessed to have all of you around.
Thank you very much. Right. So tonight, our conversation will be looking at wastage. We're looking at the economy, and we'll be looking at the mid-year budget review. Now, my preamble just touched on a few things we do badly as leaders. And we watched the Bank of Ghana, I'll use the word advisedly, misbehave. And today we are talking about 60 billion cedis in losses. This may not be strange, but how did it come to you, Doc?
Well, good evening to you and to your wonderful listeners. Let me also, if you permit me, use the opportunity to say good evening to my very good friend, Michael Aflu.
Right. I'm sure he's watching us now.
Yes, he's a strong colleague. He's a chartered, accountant, chartered, tax, and all of that. Well, let me go straight to the issues. You see, all the things that we're talking about has a connection to security. And Africa, we have gone through so much over the centuries. From our very disturbing beginning of colonization through to neo-colonization, let's say independence, neo-colonization, and currently things happening. But when you sit down carefully and you watch, you are tempted to think that our leaders are not learning. Our leaders come with their own agenda. Our leaders don't seem to be bothered about the welfare of the people. And this is worrying. Look at the entire, northern part, middle belt of Africa. All of it turning under military governance. I am not a security expert, but I know that when the people are hungry, it's a problem. I know that when political authority is not acting right, it's a problem. I know that when the society itself is not progressive, it's a problem. And we cannot allow these things to happen in perpetuity. And so it's quite worrying. But to dovetail that into the situation in Ghana currently, and as you asked, the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana matter should not be a matter that we talk about in a way to say that, let me speak good English for people to hear me, and then we gloss over it. We have come to a situation where, unbelievably, it is disturbing. The audited accounts that came out, the accounts were done by Deloitte and Touche. If you look at it, you will realize that basically, BOG is an elephant that is standing on a clay feet. BOG hasn't got a feet anymore. BOG, as is there, is gone. But let us go a little bit into the structural of things at the Bank of Ghana. There is a slide that has key people.
The slide is being prepared.
Yes.
So before you speak to it, let's bring in.
I can
okay,
go ahead.
so you can go ahead. When the slide is ready,
what
you can show
What I just
screen.
want to say is that if you look at Bank of Ghana, you look at the board of directors. The chairman of the board of directors is the governor of Bank of Ghana.
Right.
And then he is the governor. He is also the chairman of the Monetary Policy Committee. He is the head of the executive management team of the bank. And so if you look at it, he is everywhere.
And there's a representation from the Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
The Deputy Finance Minister
exactly.
is a member of the board.
And among these committees that I've just mentioned, if you add Elsie, if you add Maxwell, if you add who else? Sandra, all these four people, at least three of them, you find them in each of these boards. And the governor is at the helm of things. And so you realize that decision making, and of course the representative from the Ministry of Finance. So if you add, we are talking of 5 people who have actually superintended over these, unfortunate, happening, so to say. And so every decision is virtually, at the disposal of the governor. Today, you have reported a loss of
I think your slides are on the screen now, so you can speak to it.
Very well. So all that I'm saying is that Dr. Ernest Addison alone is the chair of the board, the governor, he is the chair of MPC, he is the executive management team.
The MPC is the Monetary Policy
Committee.
Right. Which fixes the lending rate
the
policy rate, for example.
Are you getting me? And they're supported by these 4 people. All others, yes, they have the expertise, but you cannot really be sure the extent of, their influence on those committees. You realize that you mentioned Dr. Kwachi. He has resigned. Of course, he served his term, but he could have asked for, extension or renewal. But he's moved out. The question is why? Because things are not being done right over there.
So it could have been a protest or to save his integrity.
Exactly. Okay? This 60.855 billion, the entire banking industry in Ghana has a loan book of 70 billion.
That's quite serious.
Are you getting me? And Bank of Ghana alone declared a loss of 61 billion. Exactly, something like that.
Do you have others or other slides that you want to share to this conversation?
Yes, if you move a little bit.
Okay. So while you speak to it, let me bring in Victor briefly so that you take some breath and then focus on the next part of the conversation you are bringing on board.
Okay.
Now, Victor, what are your opening remarks as a chartered accountant and looking at how banks eventually close their books or declare losses or what they will describe as bad debt? Does it come to you as something that is normal?
Well, I think that, good evening, Mr. John Kojo Adi, and all viewers. I think that what we've just seen with the structure there, I want to begin with that. What we've just seen with that structure there is a pure demonstration of functional independence crisis. You see, one person works and rolls through the whole thing over there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. We're talking functional independence. And this is a terrible matter. I'm starting with what I'm seeing on the screen. So you see that the independence of the man in question, we need to query. Well, it's a structure. That's the only thing I can say. But my point really is political override. Override, override, override.
What does it mean?
Sure. I trust and believe in the expertise we have at the Bank of Ghana. But I have most of them as my lecturers. And so to say that they all sit there and superintend over this kind of financial mishap is unbelievable. And that's why I would say that in order not to undermine academic and professional credibility, I think that we should be looking and investigating beyond what is happening there. Yes, behind this functional independence, I think there is something more to it. Political override. It's obvious. And that is impairing integrity at the Bank.
But how does this compare, for example, to, and I'll come to you very shortly, Mr. Asafate. Now, how does this compare to a bank which is supposed to be a supervisory institution, and that bank which recently whipped some institutions and closed them forcibly because of some negligence or other managerial malfunctions, be reporting to us such huge, colossal sums in terms of losses? It raises questions. A
lot of questions, but you see, this is an institution. What I want to say is that you realize that we queried the issue of closure of banks and all those ones. In reality, our system has no such provision to just go straight away and be closing banks when jobs matter in that situation. So you realize that I keep talking about political override. The idea is that they are not of themselves. But I believe that the executives at the Bank of Ghana has the professional wherewithal to do the job.
So you are playing the devil's advocate here, which I obviously will speak to. Won't spend much time on this. But Doc, let me come to you to conclude on the slides and the issues you were advancing before I brought in Victor briefly.
Very well. So I am saying that, and these are from the audited accounts. So look at these figures. These are Dr. Ernest Addison's figures. 60.855 billion loss. We know it. This then puts the bank in a negative equity position of 54.52 billion. Look, the entire, credit by the banks is 70 billion. And then the banking industry asset is 27.9 billion. That means that about 2.5 or 2 times the banking industry asset is what Bank of Ghana has swallowed.
That's serious.
This is serious. This is serious.
Yesterday, the minority leader, and I've heard other people in academia saying, the governor of the Bank of Ghana should not be opposed by now for supervising this. You support that?
As a matter of fact, he's our senior man. But I think this performance, to wake up from your bed and drive to your office and sit in your chair to say that you are superintending over that bank is unfortunate. Truthfully. I am saying that, look, and this brings to mind, you remember the cooperative bank, the bank, banks for housing.
And construction.
And construction. You remember those days? I am saying that those guys are still operating in the system. This time, they have executed it in a grand style. It is worrying. It is worrying.
Now, let me come to you, Victor. The Bank of Ghana has been given some explanation. In fact, the explanations are that the explanation is that there was an overexposure to cocoa board debts. Bank of Ghana had to take on 50% of principal haircut on total principal, which stood at 64.5 billion at the time of the exchange rate. And then they were talking about interest expense on cost of monetary policy operation, which accounted for 3.3 billion. Now, they are raising these, including the depreciation of the cedi, as explanation for you as a chartered accountant. Does this make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because that is the operation. But the idea is that, to what extent does it make that sense? We're talking prudence, diligence. If the processes they go through allow that, why not? But you see, one major thing, depreciation of the cedi. I do not want to hear them even talk about it because this is a bank.
A regulatory body.
A regulatory body that went ahead printing currencies beyond what the legal frameworks allow. You are supposed not to exceed 5% of your previous revenue. You exceeded that over and above. The reasons we do not know. And so if you come back and you are quoting depreciation of the currency as
a justification
for your losses,
that whopping bond,
then I beg to disagree with them. I think that the matter is beyond what we are talking about. I still believe in the abilities of the people at the Bank of Ghana. And I feel that if we continue to handle the matter we want to handle it, we will be whipping people behind the problem. And leaving the problem, those real people there.
Who are the real people?
The real people is politics.
It is not politics, because I disagree with you, because you are a technocrat.
Sure.
You have been taught how to be prudent in how you manage an organization, and in this case, a financial institution. Sure. If you have an integrity and you believe in principles, you should not be telling me that it is the politicians. They did not tie the hands of Dr. Addison. Otherwise, he is only playing to the gallery. So where does the argument come from?
That is a perfect statement.
Yes, of course.
What we are saying is this. You see, when you work in public service, when you work in public sector, I believe that once the operations over before the recognition of these losses, they would have demonstrated operational intelligence or force within the period. I think that whoever is in charge would have found out these things and be calling for a sack or a replacement. But at this stage, when we get to this point, when they are calling some impairment causes, some issues of depreciation, I gave them one. That if you are supposed to control liquidity, you overly print notes and you embedding the system with such. What happens? or you go back to the system, you're controlling money, and you're not able to regulate the money well, there'll be pressure on the cedi. So for depreciation,
it is not an excuse.
It's not an excuse.
Now, let me come to you, Doc. Doc, some suspect that because consistently the Bank of Ghana had been accused of helping the system to manipulate figures, perhaps the watchdog role by the IMF is what has exposed them.
You see, I said a long time ago that, number one, after 2020 elections, that we had a hung parliament. It gave me level 100 level of comfort. Then it came up that the center can no longer hold, and therefore IMF had to come in. That then gave me a level 200 level of comfort. All that I'm trying to say is that we have been watching the trend of events, the way things are going, the way this economy is being managed. Whereby somebody will say that politicians are not listening to anybody. You say this, they will not mind you. You say that, they will not listen. They are doing things the way they want it to be done. They can wake up and suspend the Public Finance Management, Management Act, right? They wake up and suspend this. They wake up and tell you that they are not doing this statutory payment. They are doing things the way it will comfort them until the IMF finally came on board. As a matter of fact, the hung parliament has helped the process to hold it in a way until the arrival of the fund. That then implies that all things will come out. And indeed, the cat has been let out of the sack. Everything is out now. We have said that reports are being cooked. Reserve position is not reported appropriately. Who mind us? Who listened? Today it is out. As we speak now, our import cover is less than 1 month. Okay? So the situation is dire. It is serious.
And it is at this stage that we want to cross over to the mid-year budget. My preamble will be some remarks by the Deputy Finance Minister. In fact, let's hold these figures which are talking about revised growth rates. Just withdraw these figures. We'll come back to them. But we have the Deputy Finance Minister, Abena Osei Asare, and then Ato Forson, who spoke strongly on the mid-year budget. I'm playing Ato Forson first, and then Abena Osei will speak. Ato Forson was speaking about the Bank of Ghana. Abena Osei was also speaking about the Bank of Ghana losses. We'll play it briefly, and then we'll delve into the second phase of our conversation, which is actually looking at the mid-year budget review and some figures government speaks about as some good signs of some positive note, and what others say differently.
The almighty Bank of Ghana is now bankrupt with a negative equity of 55.1 billion and counting. That will require taxpayers to recapitalize it. Again, Mr. Speaker, who would have thought the once prestigious Ghana Cocoa Board will today be bankrupt to the extent that they can't repay their debt. The Bank of Ghana today cannot even pay cocoa bond holders. They cannot pay their cocoa road contractors. The Cocoa Board today cannot even pay license buying companies, LBCs. Cocoa Board, they are struggling to pay fertilizer suppliers. Mr. Speaker, the MPP administration have successfully meddled the financial health of almost all our state-owned enterprises. For example, Mr. Speaker, JNPC, Yamutu, GRA Group, Yamutu, ECG, Yamutu, GIROC, Yamutu, NEPCO, Yamutu, RIDCO, Yamutu, Buffer Stocks, Yamutu, Ghana Publishing Company, Yamutu, Ghana Railways, Yamutu, STC, Yamutu, Ghana Airport Company, Yamutu. So, Speaker, almost all state enterprises are gone. We also have Governor Ernest Addison, aka the printer, who prints money for the government.
As part of the measures to streamline and help us guide our macroeconomic stability, we have an MOU with BOG not to finance government anymore. So, Mr. Speaker, that is that. Again, I also want to address the issue of the 0.8 month import cover. When you look at the definition of import cover from IMF and you look at the definition of import cover from Bank of Ghana, they are two different things. This is also size and data. When you get onto the IMF webpage, look for the Ghana program, page 3. It is right there. And let me read, Mr. Speaker, with your permission. It says that program definition for the IMF for our reserves excludes oil funds, encumbered funds, and pledged assets. For the BOG, the the international reserves includes oil funds, encumbered funds, and pledged funds. So that is the difference. That is the difference. Mr. Speaker, I also want to go to address certain things that my colleague said on the other side concerning the loss of 60.8 billion that was stated in the BOG financial statement. Mr. Speaker, in the notes, I just want to let us know that yes, BOG incurred a loss of 60.8 billion. And we ask ourselves, what is driving this? Mr. Speaker, in the first place, the domestic debt exchange that we embarked on last year, you all agree with me that with the principal, for other consumers, there was no haircut on the principal. But with BOG took a 50% haircut on the principal of the domestic debt exchange. And that alone amounted to 32.3 billion Ghana cedis, Mr. Speaker. So when you take that out of the 60.8, Mr. Speaker, I'm coming. I'll give you the breakdown for you to know why there was a loss of 60.8. Mr. Speaker, beyond the 50% principal haircut, there was also a marketable instrument of 16.1 billion that BOG had to take a hit on. And finally, with the adjustment of the cocoa bonds too, there was a loss of 4.7. So when you put all this together, you get 53.1 billion. So 53.1 billion out of the 60.8 billion is what, through government of Ghana, through the DGE.
So that was the Deputy Finance Minister, Abena Osei Asare, strongly justifying why you and I should not be angry about the 60 billion CD in losses. Now, what do you make of the two commentaries?
So, political sides are talking. And I feel that behind the financial or historical financial statement audit, there should be some financial intelligence employed in there, so we know really what is behind the figures. So
you think there should be further investigations? Now, let me take your brief comment on what they've just said.
I was just looking at my sister
Abena
defending the indefensible. What is it about a student getting an F? You get an F and you come back to tell us that, oh, it is F, but then if I were to have spent 2 or 3 nights, I would have gotten something better. You have failed. You have collapsed Bank of Ghana. You have destroyed our economy. See, all the indicators. Is it interest rates, depreciation, exchange rate, public debt, our reserve, or what? Everything is gone.
Because I see one of your slides talking about state of Ghanaian economy, public debt.
This is our situation.
But that's the 435 is what the finance minister reported as of December 2022. But just about 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago, the Bank of Ghana's latest report on the debt portfolio said we were owing about 530 billion cedis.
That was the report that came out.
But this one, the finance minister deliberately stood at December 2022.
So no
problem. That the 435 would look like that is the level.
Exactly.
But I can say on authority that the Bank of Ghana has just reported just about a week ago after the MPC meeting that our debt level was about 530 plus and so on.
Okay. So look at our situation. Primary balance is now 0.5 negative. Okay? The package, the program that we are going under, it expects that between now and 2026, we should be at a surplus of 1.5. 1.5, at least. Look at our reserve position. Because of that, we cannot even have up to a month reserve position. When this happens, you put so much pressure on your local currency. So much pressure because it hasn't got any backing. You went to Bank of Ghana, you borrowed. Look, between 2021 and 2022, that is the last reporting year, how much government instruments is Bank of Ghana holding? How come that within just 12 months, they have offloaded all of that to Bank of Ghana? What exactly are they doing? What is the case? What happened? We knew that some asset management firms, some investment banks were holding government instruments prior to the commencement of the debt exchange program.
DDEP.
And they went behind the scenes and traded them out. Who bought them?
That's a good question. But let me draw your attention to Fitch's recent, I think that's just today. Fitch, rating agency, Fitch says, and let me quote exactly a paragraph I killed. Fitch has warned that large losses imposed on bondholders under the domestic debt exchange program has significantly weakened the banking sector's capitalization. According to the UK-based firm, the restructuring of outstanding sovereign debt and impeding loan quality problems will add to capital pressures. Fitch considers solvency issues to be concentrated at the domestic banks.
Exactly. So impairment. They mentioned it right. But the basis, the sources for all those things must be looked at. You see, we try to pay lip services to the realities. I believe that integrity can be checked if diligence is working. But when moral issues go beyond that, you must look at the source. I believe that Bank of Ghana, I still believe they have something to go with. Yes, they needed to be integrous. It is not working. But we can take all of them out. Yet, anybody who comes, the hand will still be tied. Why? It is governance. It is power. Politics. Let's check this. This is what I have to say.
And that is where I disagree with you, because perhaps if I was, I am not, but I am strongly opinionated on what your conscience stands for. There are few people who will stand by what they think is right in the interest of the people. Domolevo did it. He stood by what he believes in. He was hounded out. That is where your concern is.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is that if institutions will be strong enough and work as it should be, we shouldn't be suffering as a people. Briefly.
You remember Paul Akwa?
Dr. Paul Akwa, yes.
Yes. He was our governor, I think under
Kufuor's regime.
Kufuor. This man pursued a serious inflation targeting regime. Okay? He worked so hard. After him, who came? Was Comrade Dufour.
Right.
When Comrade Dufour came, he was so diligent, and he gave us single-digit inflation.
For several months.
Exactly. They started shouting that these were cooked stuff. It is never true. All of these things. Of course, let's, gloss over Wampa and a few others, until Dr. Addison came. So what is it that
he's doing differently?
I mean, to the extent that you will crumble the whole structure. Right now, you see, we've been saying it, that things are going to go bad. Things are going to go really, really bad, if I can use the same word again, and that we should be careful. People said we were scaremongering, we were creating fear and panic. This is it. Now, you're going to raise how much? If you are in negative of 54 billion, you have to raise how much in order to even come to
but the Bank of Ghana officials are talking about recapitalization or recovering what has been lost. We'll be talking about the budget. I know time is running out. But I have Ato Forson who talks about banks and the losses they incurred. I also have the chairman of the Pentecost Church who speaks to your conscience. But I'm asking, when he was speaking, I was also asking myself that as a church leader, the things you are talking about, would you say it because you are only joining me to complain, or as leaders and very influential people of churches, as people complained some years ago, that why is it that the church is not talking? Why is it that the Christian Council is not talking? Why is that everybody is not talking? Maybe there's going to be a new chapter. After that event at Gomuafete, I want to see the chairman of the Pentecost Church, just as we have several other very, very respectable, influential people begin to speak out before Ghana crashes. Let's listen to Ato Forson, the Pentecost Church's chairman. We'll take a short break. When I come back, we'll talk about what we believe this immediate budget has for us.
Right Honorable Speaker, Ghana's financial sector has virtually collapsed. Virtually collapsed. All 23 banks in Ghana recorded massive impairment losses of over 18.3 billion Ghana cedis in 2023 alone. Mr. Speaker, to give you the details, Absa Bank recorded a loss in 2022 of 2.1 billion Ghana cedis. Access Bank recorded a loss of 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. ADB, Ghanaian Local Bank, recorded a loss of 380 million Ghana cedis. The Speaker, Bank of Africa Limited, Bank of Africa, recorded a loss of 190 million Ghana cedis. Car Bank PLC, the Speaker, recorded a loss of 1.45 billion Ghana cedis, all in 2022. The Speaker, CBG, the Consolidated Bank Ghana, recorded a loss, 2022 alone, 1.8 billion Ghana cedis, CBG. The Speaker, aside that, EcoBank, the famous EcoBank, the Speaker, EcoBank recorded a loss of 1.7 billion Ghana cedis. Aside them, the Speaker, FBN Bank Ghana Limited recorded a loss of 210 million Ghana cedis. The Speaker, Fidelity Bank recorded a loss of 1.060 billion Ghana cedis. The Speaker, I think that is not enough. First Atlantic Bank recorded a loss of 230 million Ghana cedis. First National Bank recorded a loss of 260 million Ghana cedis. The famous Ghanaian Bank, the GCB Bank PLC, recorded a loss of 2.1 billion Ghana cedis in 2022 alone. GCB, 2.1 billion Ghana cedis. Guarantee Trust Bank recorded a loss of 560 million Ghana cedis. The Speaker, as for NIB, they cannot even publish their financial report. The Speaker,
our developmental goals and our political manifestos all addresses what we want our people to have in future, not the kind of people we want to become in future. We therefore need to have a set of moral principles that will guide the life of this nation, a socially approved and acceptable pattern and norms of proper conduct that is shared by all. Moral principles will result in strong institutions and structures that will uphold our nation. Principles and values like the principles of work and the dignity of labor, principles of service, respect for all, honesty, kindness, love, faithfulness, truthfulness, forgiveness, contentment, humility, integrity, respect for time, respect for the law, moral uprightness to generate the desired transformation. Without a moral vision, a nation is tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, and eventually it degenerates into entropy. A vision makes a person, and a moral vision makes a nation. So when you talk about the United States of America, they love their flag. But ours, unless Blaster is playing soccer, you don't see this one. We need to integrate moral vision into the concept of the national development, or better still, make it its foundation.
That is Apostle Eric Nyameche, I just respect this man. I like his demeanor, even the way he speaks. And if you look at his body language, he comes across as a true man of God, which has humility written all over him. Now, after listening to him, let's move into our budget. When the finance minister spoke, he made us believe that some indicators that he made reference to suggest that we are beginning to see some change in the positive direction, which will be a reflection of the positive impact of the support we got from the IMF. For example, he made reference to inflation, which stood at 54 plus and now 42. He made reference to the cedi, which has slowed in terms of depreciation. He made reference to other indicators, in his opinion, suggest that things will be well. However, there were some caveats. For example, he was looking at revenue mobilization. So revenue from the oil fields were going to go down because from the projection they made and the price of crude oil on the international market suggested that we may not get what we made projections for. Again, you would also realize that when many people thought government was going to introduce new taxes to perhaps bring in more, there was nothing like new taxes and so on and so forth. So for you as a critical Ghanaian, after listening to the budget and all the debate that has gone around, what's your position now?
So before I say this, I think I want to say this. Chairman Nyamiche is my chairman, Church of Pentecost. So yes, but to the statements of the budget, you see, that budget was initially meant to restoring and sustaining macroeconomic stability. That is the target for the budget. What we see currently, I don't know what they are talking about as savings for us. If you introduce a budget, the midway you come to do only austerity measures. Austerity measures basically is that you say that I want to reduce budget deficit, but I don't want to sacrifice growth.
What does it mean? I'm not an economist, so help me small appreciate you.
The amount of money you voted you place would have been appropriating for this kind of expenditure lines. You are saying that they are too much. I want to reduce it so that my budget deficit will not be too high. But as I do that, I must not compromise the development of our nation, the growth of our nation. So we say austerity measures. Now what we do, the tools we use are either cut costs. We cut costs or we bring more taxes so we can rake in revenue. Those are the two tools we can use. Now, in this light, we realized that we were overburdened by taxes and existing obnoxious taxes. And so bringing taxes now will not be appropriate. So we came in to say that we want to play safe. We don't want trouble. We are cutting the budget by 21 billion. You have not done anything. You see, practically we must be speaking the truth. The fact that you come and said we didn't introduce further taxes. The taxes you have even introduced, people are usurping the rules and they are not paying. And that's why I was saying earlier that our harbors, our ports are empty. Nobody is paying tax. Everybody is finding ways to go around it because of this thing. Recently, we introduced another bracket to personal income tax. So you realize that you earn your income and you are paying huge, up to about 35% as the highest. That is bad. That is not too good. If you want to raise money, it's not about only taxation. Because as you do that, you would have been discouraging savings. And you would have been discouraging investment. So we must be looking at some of these things practically. Now, going back to the cut in expenditure as an austerity measure, you cut expenditure. The question is that, what would that cut in expenditure be slammed on? Budget in Ghana does not provide ostentation to anybody. It's just common comfort that it gives to us. So if you are further reducing those things, the question is that, is it that the figures were too big, or is it because you have now realized you cannot meet your revenue target? Obviously, this is the point, you cannot meet revenue targets. And so you should come very clear. If you have introduced taxes so humongous to the point that people are moving away, you see, some of these things, you must elicit public acceptance. You don't have legitimacy. And so you introduce them and people are moving away. It's about time that politicians begin to listen to what elite ideas are presenting. If they had listened, some of these things wouldn't have happened.
Okay, so because we don't have much time, let me also take you have also listened to the budget. It raises very interesting points. I have also looked at the areas of some flagship programs government still is bent on introducing. From what you said, your own personal initial comment on this budget.
Well, I would say that this is constitutional requirement that he should come to the House, or he should inform the House about the end of year actual performance and how far the economy has performed over the past 6 months, halfway the year. But for that, he wouldn't have shown up at all. As a matter of fact, if you look at what we have at hand, the only comfort is the fact that IMF is in the mix. IMF is in the picture. The budget is strictly per the framework of the fund. And so they cannot have it.
There's no breathing space.
No. The only thing is that a finance minister, in fact, he had to prepare this budget reluctantly, because if they were to have found their way, they will continue to expend. For every cedi that we raise, we spend additional cedi. That's the way we are living in Ghana. So he comes and tells us that, oh, he has turned the corner, or he's going to turn the corner, or he's turning the corner. Which is which? Is this economy doing well when our public debt is at this level? Is it doing well when we cannot meet our debt obligations, we are defaulting, and we are doing debt treatment? Is it doing well when inflation is around 40 plus? Is the economy doing well when our reserve position is gone? Is the economy doing well when banks are not performing, when interest rates are high? Please, these are the indicators, okay? We got to be real with ourselves. Look at the extractive sector. Look at the energy sector. Nothing is working.
Now, there are other things that are pending. For example, the finance minister talks about the next stage of the DDEP. So he looks at the IPPs, the energy sector.
Yes.
He talks about the
cocoa bills,
the pension funds, the cocoa bills,
yes.
and then the non-denominated dollar bills,
exactly,
or whatever, and so on. That is one leg.
Yes.
The other leg also, in my opinion, has to do with what I describe as critical hurdles that they have to cross. For example, the IMF will be having a discussion on us in September, and that will inform whether the second tranche will come as expected, and then almost every 6 months that will continue. So it would mean that beyond what we have seen, maybe with the support of the IMF, there are some great difficult hurdles that we have to cross.
No doubt. No doubt, because even though we are saying that...
So is it not the reason why there's supposed to be a buy-in from you and I, the taxpayer, those in opposition, etc., give government some comfort zone to be able to operate?
No, the point is that if you look at what we have currently, okay, what we have at hand, the mess that has been created, the IMF facility cannot take us that far. That is the truth of the matter. If you look at Bank of Ghana alone, that is more than twice.
I've seen one of the slides you shared with us, rolling on the screen, fight inflation. So these are obviously what you think should be the way forward?
Very well. So I am saying that if we can make any headway, in fact, I'm saying that these are the things that we have to do to meet IMF conditionality number one.
But if you look at C, operate a lean, efficient government, reduce OGM expenditure, Office of Government Machinery expenditure. For example, reduce your imports through aggressive ISI, TPP initiative. Now, hold on. Now, the area, the point C, I'll come to you, Victor, soon. But the point C, government may not be lean as we speak because we know the size. 2, I have seen the 1D, 1F, PDF, that's a PJF.
Yes.
I've seen
for food and jobs.
The U-Start, other interventions that government is mentioning. And some say that at this stage, is it necessary for government to say, I'm still bent on Agenda 111, when some of those savings could go to cushion and then get the economy stabilized? But they will also say these are pro-poor policies. And others are saying these are pro-2024 election machinery policies that they are also looking at to break the eight. So are we going or we are coming?
No, the point is this. In all of these things, there is the critical component of social protection.
Right.
That I buy into. In fact, I am a lot more bent on welfare economics. In a situation where things are hard, what is it that we can do to help the most vulnerable? So social protection is key, but how do you administer it? So the Youth Start program, the LEAD program, how are we administering it? Who are the people who get these monies? Let's go and see.
And what are the impacts?
What has been the impact so far? So it's not just about giving names and giving jargons and all of that.
You do your concluding remarks, but he raised some critical issues, made reference to some of the key points he raised. See, for example, operating a lean government, efficient government, etc., reducing office of government machinery. I've heard government officials say they made savings of about 21 billion cedis, and we know travels should be reducing. But if you look at the Bank of Ghana's operational losses, you would have realized that the Auditor General was raising questions about some figures related to expenses. That doesn't reflect a government in 2022 going into 2023, knowing very well that we have to take some critical austerity measures at those levels, and nothing is showing positive in that direction.
So with this, generally, we want to look at secretariat independence. You see, flagship programs of government, they are meant for gathering political votes.
Right.
And so when we allow these things to roll, in difficult times, we don't do unnecessary investments. We don't do unnecessary investments. We do investments that hold the middle.
So which of them would you call unnecessary? Planting for food and jobs. We saw what happened just some few months ago when food inflation shot up and the Agric Minister had to do some magic. We are looking at 1D, 1F, and many of us know whether the industries government claims have been established within the time frame. I had 160 industries, or is it 120 industries, but over 100. And then we're also looking at the Youth Start and so on, which started after the 2023 budget. But the question is, which of them, in your estimation, can easily be put aside or suspended while we have some enough room for operation?
It is a mix. We make too much noise over nothing. What is Youth Start? What is his sustainability plan? Free SHS, very special, super program by all standards. But what is the sustainability program we have for it? We do nothing. We only make noise with sloganeer, and that is all we do. So free education is a very potent policy. We all have our children go to school for free. But the issue is that why should it be that at a point they go to school and they go hungry? Why is it that they go to school in the second year before they get 3 exercise books per student? When you have already disarmed all parents that do not give exercise books, if you do that, you are going against my policies. What are we trying to do? Are we messing the economy? We said that we are planting for food and job. Yes, when you take the food basket, the consumer price index, and you measure, they said that food is about one third of it. And we say food back, the consumer price index increases 4.8, 3.4 over time. And that is the biggest cause of inflation. And how do you get free if these are the issues? Yet we have planting for food and jobs. It's a very huge secretariat. Many people have been paid. That's why I asked the question. Is the secretariat so independent politically? And what is the sustainability plan? I have seen several places, 1D, 1 dam, 1 district, 1 dam. I saw trailers go into places and remain there for years. What is the operational cost for those amounts?
Okay, Dr. Asafo-Akyei will talk, but there is something I monitored on, I think, Al Jazeera or CNN, one of those international networks. We talked about democratic accountability. And it says in Africa it is lacking. And when I listened to Apostle Eric Nyamiche,
my chairman.
Your chairman, he also talked about society being part of the problems we are facing. But poor man like me, selling a brownie in Cartier, I have voted for you to be in government. You know all the books like Dr. Asafache or the chartered accountant here. Why would you blame me, Koku, for your failure that is bringing problems to me? Should there be a revolt? Should there be a positive defiance? Are Ghanaians so meek, or Ghanaians are not angry enough? Should Ghanaians immediately begin to become angry enough to whip politicians to line? Because at the end of the day, they will be in their comfort zones. Well, I've not wrapped up. Let me take their concluding remarks and I'll tell you why you should become somebody different after this program. Doc, let me start with you.
I will say this, that the NPP so-called programs, flagship programs, are extremely questionable. Look, if planting for food and jobs is working, the inflation basket, as the CPI, should not be controlled by food. It's as simple as that. But we have the person who has superintended over that, telling you and I that he has done so well and that he would want to become your president. Set that aside. If the COVID money, you see, the whole point is this, that because we have been so aggressive in siphoning money from the system, there's no money left for the job to be done. And so the liability side of the country's balance sheet has grown so huge without any asset supporting it. And so when you do that, when it happens like that, then you are highly leveraged.
You are caught pants down.
You wouldn't have any space any longer. And so sometimes I sit back and I say, why? And you are asking, are Ghanaians not angry enough? I will tell you this, that Ghanaians are so angry beyond the point of expression. Mm-hmm. And so you, as a father at home, if you are so angry beyond a certain level, you rather decide to sit back, take in some deep breath, and see what will come next. Ghanaians are so angry, but we are also bent on protecting the Fourth Republic. That is what I would say.
Right. So that's Dr. Asafote. Asafote, your concluding remarks.
So
briefly.
there is economic pandemonium. Economic pandemonium, and we are creating sensations. We're saying that we have borrowed 5.5 billion through treasury bills. We are coming back for another 41.2 billion. You have announced it. You are telling people, hold your money, I am coming. It's a spree, come and take money. So there will be slow economic activity going forward. Our currency will further depreciate and every other thing will go back. See, the Ministry of Finance has failed us. Economic, monetary policies have gone down continually. Bank of Ghana has also failed us. There is trouble. God help Ghana.
Well, the gentleman you heard just a while ago is Victor Edu, a chartered accountant. Small man in our model. I believe they give us white shot. That he talks sense. I'm so much impressed. I wish I had a 2-hour program. And Dr. Nene Adams Asafote, financial economist, adjunct senior lecturer, School of Graduate Studies, UPSA. Of course, the little PowerPoint presentation he did makes me feel like I should go back to school. I will. Doc, I'll be your student. And Victor, I'll be your student. And that's how I end this program. It will be a repeat tomorrow between 1 and 2 p.m. Next Wednesday, we'll be back again for another conversation. Bye for now.